Hello, everybody. We are early, so we're gonna just give it a minute and let everybody get on. This is my beautiful wife, Trina. Some of you asked that she would join us, and so she is joining us. So, you excited about this? Nope. She hates this kind of stuff. Hates it. And that's good. That's good.
Out of my comfort zone.
The first story that I'm going to tell is about her. So she agreed to sit in during this story, and probably disagree with me when anything that I tell her, anything that I tell you guys is off. So that's what she's going to do. We'll just give it a couple more minutes. I did watch one of these from somebody else the other day, and they had some great advice. They said, hey, invite your friends to join us. I don't know if you guys have any friends. A lot of you probably don't. But if you do, invite them, and we'll let them join. So just a few more seconds, and then we'll get started.
The sun is shining.
Mark, how you doing in Utah? I see that you just joined us. Mark's a good buddy of mine. Salt Lake City, Utah. I chatted with him the other day, and he has built his business so that he can work from home. And how brilliant is that? I wish I would have thought of that, Mark. Thanks for the tip.
I should wave, but that'd be a lot of waves.
Be a lot of waves. Yeah.
Mark says you're his only friend.
I'm my only friend. Well, Mark, we're kind of in the same boat, so that's great. But cool. Well, let's get started. I've got a few stories I'm going to share with you. Trina has to run to a board meeting, and so we're not going to make this too long. She agreed to sit in this first story because she was a part of it. And one of the first businesses that I ever had was a Marble Slab Creamery ice cream store, and this was right after college. And Caitlin has been watching some of these, and she said, Nick, you got to tell a marble slab story. And there's several marble slab stories that I could tell. One that I remember, my brother and I owned these ice cream stores. We had one in Edmond and one in Tulsa. And we primarily managed the one in Edmond. We had a really good manager for the one in Tulsa. And the one in Edmond, we had these high school kids, these college kids that would come in and work for us. And I remember one time we had a young man. He was a very attractive man. He was, you remember his name? I want to say it was Brandon, but it definitely wasn't my brother. But this guy was just a stud. He played football. But we offered him $20 if he would eat a pound of piping gel. We would sign, happy birthday, whoever, with this piping gel. And he's like, man, I'll eat that for $20. He was a college kid, didn't know any better. And so I said, man, for $20, all you got to eat's a pound of it. And a pound of it, it's about the size of a small loaf of bread. And it would be the equivalent of eating a pound of mentholatum. And he did not get through it. But and thank goodness, because I don't know if I had $20 back then. But the story that I want to tell you is about a catering that I did with this lovely woman right here. Now, Trina, when we got out of college, when we got married, she was a registered nurse, still is a registered nurse, and you don't have to look at me. You can look at the camera. You want to not do this because that kind of show a double chin. Just keep your head up. But I would do a lot of catering, so pharmaceutical reps would hire me to come in to a hospital, doctor's office, and we would do a Sunday bar. And on this particular time of year, we had a ton of caterings, and I was shorthanded. And so it was Trina's day off from work, and I just begged her, will you please come help me? I told her, man, it's a lot of fun. You will love it. And that may have been an exaggeration. But she refused. Finally, because I am persistent, like Pepe Le Pew, the skunk, finally she agreed to come with me on this catering, and I was so excited because I wanted to surprise her with where this catering was at, because this catering was at the office where she works. Now, at this time, she was working in the nursery at Lakeside Women's Hospital, and so I had a catering for, I don't know, 50 or 60 people there, and we were going to build a Sunday bar. And so she agreed I was going to keep that a surprise, because who doesn't love a surprise? And so as we're headed to the catering, to the hospital, I'm coaching Tarina on how to build a sundae. I mean, if you guys ever watch Seinfeld, you know about the soup Nazi. I was kind of like the ice cream sundae Nazi. And there's a certain way to build a sundae, and then there's a whole bunch of wrong ways. And of course, I knew the right way. And but a sundae starts with the foundation. Now, we used a 16-ounce dish, and the foundation of any perfect sundae is 3 perfectly round scoops of ice cream. And I call it the trifecta of deliciousness, but it is the foundation of any sundae. And if you build the foundation right, you really can't go wrong. And so our sundae bar was pretty elaborate. Of course, we had ice cream, but then we had all these different toppings. We had fresh cut strawberries, we had Heath bar, we had Oreos, we had Butterfinger, we had chocolate chips, peanuts, pecans, just about anything you could imagine. And so the idea is I would build the foundation of this sundae, I hand it to our client, and our client gets to put whatever they want on this sundae. And then they hand it back to us, and we swirl on the hot fudge and caramel, and that is critical step in the sundae making process, because the swirl of the hot fudge and caramel is really what makes it look good. And you and I, we both know you eat with your eyes first. And so if it looks good, it'll taste good. And so on the way to this catering, I told Trina, I said, you're going to be doing the hot fudge and caramel. And it's really important that when you put the hot fudge on, you swirl this hot fudge. If you just blob it, I used a 2-ounce ladle. If you blob it, then you got this 2-ounce chunk of hot fudge that just kind of hits the sundae, and then it just goes off into the side, and then it looks uglier than homemade sin. It's just awful. I said, you've got to do a good job with the hot fudge and caramel. We pull into the hospital where she currently works, or not today, but then, and she was not happy. She did not want to get out of the truck. I begged her. Finally, she got out. She, as we walked through the halls, she kind of hid in the shadows all the way through the halls. Didn't want to be seen. And pretty soon, we started setting up the hot fudge, or the sundae bar. I had a couple aprons. I put on the boss apron. I gave her the employee apron. Looking back, probably should have given her the boss apron. But I immediately, once we had the sundae bar all set up, I announced, hey, the sundae bar is open, and a line of 60 medical staff immediately formed a line. And I know Trina was nervous. I mean, she wants to do a good job. She wants to be a good employee. And so I was building this sundae, the 3 perfectly round scoops of ice cream in the bottom of this dish, and I'm building it, and I hand it to the client, and the client loads it up with everything they want, and then they hand it back to Tarina. And I'm watching out of the corner of my eye, because we talked about the swirl in the truck, so she knows what this is all about.
There was some distance between us.
Yeah, there was probably, we were set up on 2 8-foot tables, so there's probably 14 feet distance, but I was still watching. And she takes the first sundae, and the key is you got to stir, and then you got to swirl. So you stir the hot fudge, and then you swirl the hot fudge. And Trina grabbed it, and she stirred it. It was textbook. It was absolutely perfect. She stirred it, and then when she went to swirl it, instead of swirling it, she just blobbed it. And when I mean blob, I mean she took that 2-ounce ladle and just murdered this sundae, and this big old chunk of hot fudge hit the sundae, and it just went to the side. It was the ugliest thing I've ever seen.
It was a good amount.
The amount doesn't matter if it's done wrong. But
Didn't have enough.
they would still have the same amount if you would have swirled it. But anyway, we won't get into it.
Okay.
But, so, I see this out of the corner of my eye, and I'm like, oh, this is a disaster. And I'm thinking she's going to take the Sunday away from our client and she's going to throw it in the trash and she's going to let him start over. But she didn't. She just said, enjoy. And I'm like, how are you going to enjoy this? What's there to enjoy? This Sunday's a disaster. But I thought, you know what? Rookie mistake. The next one will be better. And so I'm watching and the next one gets in line and she blobs it. And that's when I realize she thinks she's doing a good job. And she's clearly not. It's a disaster. I mean, I'm sitting here, 1,000 ideas are going through my mind. I'm watching my entire ice cream empire go down the toilet because my wife won't swirl it. And I don't know what to do. And then I had an idea pop into my mind. We could do on-the-job training. We could fix this right now. Now, it was going to take somebody who was discreet, but also on point. Remember, there is a room full of people who she works with, so she knows all these people. And so at just the right moment, I point at her with my index finger, and I said, hey, swirl it! And then I said, swirl it. And then I said, swirl it. I mean, looking back, there's probably the third swirl it that probably got me in trouble. I can't help it if my voice carries. She says I yelled at her in front of all her friends. They said the same thing. The entire room hushed. They put laser. Have you ever seen the movies where laser beams actually come out of somebody's eyes? I always thought that was a special effect. It's not. No, she can do it. Because she shot laser beams into me. So did everybody else in the room. It was, we've only worked together 45 days in our entire life. I'm sorry, 45 minutes. 45 minutes, not 45 days. Oh, help us all. 45 minutes in our entire life, and that was it. The rest of the catering didn't go much better. My training didn't work. She never did figure out how to really swirl it, and
But they tasted good. I know
I'm sure they were great Sundays. We went home. We didn't have kids yet. It was just us, and by the time I'd unloaded everything and at the shop and went back home, I kind of thought it was over. And so when we got home, I suggestively rubbed her back, and I just thought, hey, I mean, what are you doing? And needless to say, nothing was the right answer. And the good news is, 3 weeks later, she started talking to me again. So it was at least 3 weeks. It was at least 3 weeks. But to this day, she refuses to work with me in any professional capacity.
I will do things to help behind the scenes.
You'll do things to help. Was it pretty accurate, that story? Pretty accurate.
It's tough.
It was tough. It was tough. Got to know where...
We learned a lot.
Yes, we did. We learned a lot. We learned not to work with each other. Do you want to hang out, or you gonna go?
You did a great job.
Okay. Well, I'm going to share another story. This is the time I almost got tased in a movie theater, and then after this story, I'm going to have my son Cruz join us for a story. But when we did have kids, we still have kids, but when our kids were little, I lived in Oklahoma City and had a good buddy, Todd France, still friends, but we would, after we got the kids to bed, and our kids were at that age where you just couldn't wait for bedtime. And not so that you could watch a movie or do anything, but just so that you could go to sleep, because you're just so exhausted, and some of you are at that point right now. But our kids were at that same age, but my buddy and I, we were both night owls, and we liked watching movies, and so often we would go to the movie theater and catch the midnight show or the 10:30 show, whatever we could find. And on this particular evening, usually the theater was empty. We were the only ones in there, just a handful of people in there. And guy code is you always leave a seat between you. You guys know this. same thing in a bathroom. If there's 7 urinals on a wall, there's only 4 people that can use it because you got to keep a space between you. But so we always kept a seat between us. Everybody gets 2 cup holders. But on this particular night, man, the movie was busy, and so there's a lot of people coming into the theater. And about 5 minutes before the movie started, the theater staff came in and said, everybody needs to scoot into the middle. We got more seats, more people coming. We need the seats. And so before we knew it, Todd and I are elbow to elbow, right next to each other. That's the bad news. The good news is, on my left side was a good-looking college co-ed, a little blonde gal. I don't remember any specifics, but I just remember she was a very attractive young lady, and not that I care, but I mean I'd rather sit next to a good-looking gal than somebody that looks like me. And so now the movie starts, and when we go to a movie, I usually would always wear, this was in the fall, I would wear like a t-shirt and then like a pullover, like a fleece long sleeve pullover. That way, if I got hot, I could take it off, but I didn't have to mess with a jacket. And so we're sitting in this theater, and it's just packed full of people, and so there's just 1 million BTUs a minute pumping into this room. And I realized pretty quick that I am just sweating profusely. I mean, the amount of sweat and the matted hair and sweat and layers of t-shirt and sweat, it was just out of control. And I thought, I gotta shed this fleece. But I am a polite moviegoer. I don't like to disrupt everybody else's experience. I don't want to go to step up and make a scene in front of everybody, take this fleece off, but I also don't want to step in front of 20 people. And so I devised a plan where I could just slip this off real quick without anybody noticing. And I was going to wait for the room to get dark. And as soon as the room got dark, then I was just going to grab the shirt tail of this fleece and just whip it right off my head. And as I was devising this plan in my head, the room went dark. And I thought, oh, right now's my chance. So I grabbed my fleece and I whipped it off my head. And instant, I was cooled off. I mean, it was just felt like a miracle to have this breeze hitting me, and it's like, wow, I cannot believe how hot that fleece was. And 7 seconds later, some white cloud hit the screen. You know how it does in a movie theater, and all of a sudden it's like a spotlight is on you. And the gal sitting next to me and myself, we found out at the same time that when I took my fleece off, my t-shirt came with it. And so I am sitting there without a shirt on. Now you probably know this, but nothing, and I mean nothing, will freak a college girl out more than the moment they realize they're sitting next to a big hairy man that's getting naked. When that happens, all bets are off. As soon as I saw it, I realized it, and I let out some type of noise, which brought the entire theater attention to me. And the spotlight is on me and this hairy white body. And she is freaking out, and she's now digging in her purse. And I just say, please don't tase me. Please don't tase me. I don't know if she's going to shoot me or tase me. And where's my t-shirt? It is wrapped up in this fleece. I can't get to it. It is a knot, and the harder I struggle, the more attention I bring to myself. And the only thing Todd's doing, he's like, dude, why are you getting naked? What's wrong with you, man? So he's trying to distance himself from me. I don't remember what all happened after that. I eventually got my shirt out of the sleeve of my fleece, and I pulled it over my head, and it had rolled up tighter. Have you ever had like a fruit roll-up that got hid in the bottom of your backpack for 6 months? Because that's what it was, rolled up tight, and it was rolled up right underneath my man boobs, and I had to literally peel it off to get this shirt back on. I have no idea what, Sarah Jones, please reenact this. Absolutely not. Let's not. Cruz, go get me a fleece. Not happening. That'll be an after hours deal we'll do. But, yeah, she left, and she never came back to the theater. So I had a seat next to me. The gal sitting next to her said, "You are not taking this seat in between us," because Todd wanted me to scoot over, so I didn't. But take it off, Nick. Scott, nobody likes you. I got more stories about you, Scott. I'm not going to share them tonight. Cruz, I want you to join me. You guys, a lot of you guys know Cruz. This next story is not about Cruz, and actually, this next story may not even be that funny. But Cruz has never heard this story before, and there's a few moments in this story where I know he's going to start laughing. So I don't want you to necessarily pay too much attention to what I say, but I want you to watch him, because watching him get cracked up will probably make you wet yourself. So when I was young, I went to this little school out in western Oklahoma. My folks helped start, called Victor Christian School. It was a little bitty elementary school. I don't know, there was between 40 and 80 kids going to this school at any given time. And a good friend of mine, Justin Copus, we would get in all kinds of trouble. And we had recess twice a day. And I don't know how old I was. I was probably 4th or 5th grade. And we had a school building, and then behind it was a well house. We had a water well there. And we were playing around in recess one day, and we found 2 shovels. And what does 2 10, 12-year-old boys do when they find 2 shovels? Well, you have a sword fight. You know, that's what you do. No. What we did is we dug a hole. I mean, that's what 2 kids are going to do. You get a shovel, you're going to dig a hole, right? Mm-hmm. You dig a hole. And so we spent every recess for the next week digging this hole. And both of our moms taught at the school, so we had to get there early and we had to stay late. So we would dig the hole before school and after school, and then twice during recess. And after a couple of weeks, we got a very respectable hole dug. And we did a fantastic job on this hole. We wanted to make sure the sides were very straight. We would be throwing dirt way up to get it out of the hole, and at the end of recess, we'd have to help each other out of the hole. And finally, the hole was finished. And I didn't put a tape to it, but the hole was probably 6 foot deep. It was probably 8 foot long. It was probably 2.5, 3 foot wide. And I remember Justin and I standing back, and we're thinking, man, this is good. I kind of can imagine what God felt like after he created the universe. It's like, this is good. But it wasn't finished. And we looked over at the water well, and there was a water hose. And I thought, well, what would any young man do that just built a perfectly good hole and you've got a water hose? We decided to fill it up with water. Because what we thought we just built was the perfect swimming pool. No, what we'd actually built was a grave. And it wasn't just any grave, it was our grave. It was our grave that we had built. And so, now, one of the cool things is I always had a belt with my name on it. I don't know, you guys remember that? It's like a leather belt, and they had stamped your name in the back of this belt, and there was like red felt in between the letters, and so it was like, it wasn't embossed, but it was embossed, but it was also cut into the leather belt. And I wore that thing everywhere, and it had my name, Nicholas, right on the back, and I remember that, and we let that water hose run all day. And after school, we went out there, and that hole was perfectly filled with water. And so what would a young man do that just built a perfectly good swim pool? What would they do? Well, you would jump in it. And so we didn't take off our clothes. We didn't take off our cowboy boots. We were not 6 foot tall. We jumped in that water. I don't know how long we dog paddled in that water to try to stay alive. But before long, both of our mothers had come out to pull us out of the hole. I thought they were saving us, but they were so mad. I don't remember a whole lot, but I remember my mom pulling my belt with my name on the back and whipping me with it. And you have not been whipped until you've been whipped with a wet leather belt with your name on it. And I remember my name was on this belt. Because that night after I got out of the shower, I remember looking in the mirror at my rear and I saw Salakin. And I'm like, what is Salakin? And what it is, it's my name spelled backwards, and it was imprinted on my rear, and it stayed there for the better part of a week. But to this day, anytime I see a name on a belt, I just get sweats. I just break out in a full body sweat. So don't ever dig a hole filled up with water and jump in it. The next story I want to tell you, this includes and you can stay right here, but this includes my father, my brother, and my grandfather, Louis Bass. It was Thanksgiving. Now, I have a healthy respect for snakes. My grandfather calls it a healthy respect. I'm probably just scared of snakes. But it's a healthy respect. And I understand snake season. So during snake season, I'm on the lookout. And snake season is spring, summer, and fall. I know in the winter, snakes are not out. It's really probably the only time that I sleep well is during the winter, because I don't have to worry about a snake being somewhere. And on this particular day, it was actually Thanksgiving, and we had a water well go out. Now, if you've ever been in a situation where you had to pull a well, well, if you've never had to pull a well, the truth is your parents probably loved you a lot more than mine did. But we had to pull a well, and the way a water well works, you've got a couple hundred feet of pipe, and then you've got a pump on the end of it, and you have to pull all this pipe to get to the motor. Some wells are filled with rusty metal pipe, and some are put together with a plastic heavy-duty pipe. And this one was a plastic heavy-duty pipe. And I don't know how old I was. I know I was old enough to not be very good help. So I'm guessing 23, 24. But no, I was probably 12, maybe 10. And I was standing off with my grandfather. We were about 20 feet or 20 yards away from the water well. And my brother and my dad were down in the hole, and they were pulling this pipe up. And my grandfather and I, we were out standing in the wheat pasture, and he was helping me practice my swear words and my dirty jokes, like any grandfather would do. And what I didn't realize was going on is while my brother and father were pulling this pipe out of this well, they got about 100 feet down, and all of a sudden they found a great big snake wrapped around this pipe. Now, my dad does not have the healthy respect for snakes that I do. And so what Dad did is Dad reached down and grabbed the snake by the head and then stretched it out really long. And he looked at Brandon and he said, "Watch this." And he looked at me and Grandpa way out there, and he swung that snake and threw it in the air at us. Now, Grandpa and I, we're minding our own business. It's the middle of winter. I'm not worried about a snake. My brain is not thinking there might be a snake. I also know where snakes live. Snakes live on the ground. They live in trees. I know snakes don't fly. So I've never been concerned about a snake being in the air. When this snake starts flying at us, my grandfather takes off. Now, Grandpa's got a really good transfer rate. His transfer rate is a lot better than mine, and older people do. And transfer rate is how fast information transfers from your brain to your feet. For me, it was slow. I was young. My transfer rate was clogged up. So I see this snake spiraling in the air at me, and I realize there's a lot of things going through my mind. And the first thing is, why is that snake flying? The next one was, why is that snake smiling? I had really good eyesight. I could see that snake smiling at me. Like, why is this snake smiling? Now, my brain is telling me this snake can't hurt you. You're more afraid of it, or it's more afraid of you than you are of him. My brain knows all that stuff. My brain is telling me this is not a poisonous snake, and my brain knows all this. It's my feet and my arms that I was having trouble convincing. Grandpa is gone. I ended up moving. Grandpa said I killed a full acre of wheat. Just right there. I just stomped it in the ground before that snake finally landed on me. I actually broke the Guinness Book World Record for a land mile. The problem is it didn't count because I never left a 30-acre or a 30-yard radius. I just stomped that wheat to nothing. Snake landed on me. All of that moving still ended up under the snake. After that, my grandfather and I, we moved away about another 40 yards. We wanted to have a safe distance between us and that hole. And sure enough, they found another snake. Dad said, and here comes that thing coming right at us again. Dad said, the only redeeming factor is Dad said he almost threw out his shoulder trying to get that snake over to us. He had to throw it so far. To this day, I look up in the sky, even if there's nothing above me, because I wonder if there's a snake up there. Last thing, last story. It may be a story. It might be more of a lesson. One of the things I talk about in my workshops is are 3 simple words. And I always tell everybody, I want you to write these 3 words down. And those 3 words are help me understand. Help me understand is another way of saying what the heck. Or what the fill in the blank. But help me understand. I'm always encouraging my clients, my loved ones, my coworkers, anybody that I work with to use these 3 magic words. And I got these from Mark LeBlanc, my business coach and mentor. But help me understand, I think as leaders, our job is to collect the facts. And I think too often, whether we are a leader at home or a leader at work or if we're on the school board, I think too often we assume what we think we know. And I think that's where we get in trouble. I was in Coos Bay, Oregon, a little fishing town right on the coast of Oregon. And I was working with this guy named Dave. And he was in my audience. And Dave was 64 years old. He was just about ready to retire. And we were talking about help me understand. And he said, oh, heck, Nick. He said, I spent the first 3 years in the truck. I said, in the truck? He said, yeah, the first 3 years of my apprenticeship I spent in the truck. And I said, well, what do you mean you spent them in your truck? I said, were you in service? He said, no, I wasn't in service. He said, I'd do something wrong, and my boss would look at me and say, oh, heck, Dave, you do less damage in the truck. Go sit in the truck. And he said, I literally sat in the truck for the first 3 years. He said, but my boss never knew why I did anything wrong. He never asked. We always assume. And I teach this, help me understand in my workshops. And after one workshop, I had a guy call me from Houston. And this individual from Houston, he had been in my workshop a couple weeks prior, and he said, Nick, I used help me understand. And I said, tell me about it. And he said, well, he said, I got this journeyman on one of my jobs, and he said, man, this is one of my best journeymen. He said, this guy shows up like clockwork. He said, we start at 7 o'clock, and he said, all of a sudden, one day, he started showing up at 8 o'clock. And I'd tell him, I'd say, hey, we start at 7, not 8. We start at 7. He said, I know, boss. Sorry, boss. Won't happen again, boss. Next day, showed up at 8. And he said, hey, what's the deal? I said 7, not 8. He said, sorry, boss. Won't happen again, boss. Next day, showed up at 8. He said, this went on for about a week. So finally I sat down with my superintendent, and I just asked my superintendent, I said, hey, what should we do with this guy? He's one of my best guys. He's showing up an hour late. I don't know what to do. And the superintendent was also in my workshop, and he said, well, maybe you should try some of that Nick Biddle stuff. He said, try that. And so he sat down with him, and he just said, man, he said, help me understand what's going on. He said, you've been showing up like clockwork every single day, and all of a sudden you're showing up an hour late. And this guy said, I know, boss. He said, it's just impossible for me to get here on time. Now, a lot of times as leaders, we'll have this knee-jerk reaction, and we'll be like, start going to bed on time, start treating this like a career, start taking this seriously. We've got all these things that we assume, but this guy didn't. This foreman didn't, and this foreman said, well, help me understand why it's impossible for you to get here on time. He said, oh, boss, he said, I hate to even bring this up. He said, no, I just want to know. And he said, well, boss, he said, last week my wife took off. And he said, right now, it's just me and my little boy. And he said, the problem is my little boy's special needs. And he said, there's only one daycare center on the south side of Houston that can take care of his disability. And he said, they don't open till 7. And by the time I drop him off, I have to drive all the way through town to the north side of Houston, but he said by the time I get through all the traffic, he said it's been an hour. And he said, I spent the last week trying to reroute my my route, trying to figure out a different route. He said, yesterday I even went to the daycare center to see if I could pay them to show up an hour early. But they can't do that. They can't make that exception for me. And he said, boss, I know you got to fire me. I get it. He said, right now we're just trying to figure out life. He said, boss, he said, that little boy's the most important thing in the world to me. He said, I don't know what we're going to do, but he said he don't understand why mama don't come home anymore. My client, the foreman I was working with and the superintendent, they got together and he said, man, here's what's going on. What do you want to do? And the superintendent said, we've got another job on the south side of town. He said, I bet he would, if he would transfer, we could move him down there. And they looked on the map. The other job was only about a mile and a half from his daycare center. And they came back to him and they said, listen, buddy, they said, we hate to hear what's going on. And we got another job about a mile and a half from your daycare center. And if you'd like to transfer, we could put you there. And he said, we figured you'd show up 10 minutes late instead of an hour late. And they said, would that help you? And they said, that young man just broke down right there in their office. And they asked him, they said, why didn't you bring this up? Why didn't you say anything? He said, oh, I know, boss. He said, I was thinking about it, but he said, you're always telling us don't bring our personal problems to work. And he said, I didn't want to do that. I was trying to figure this out on my own. I mean, do you think that young man's a little more loyal to that company? Oh, he absolutely is. You say something bad about that company, that young man throw rocks through your window tonight. He would. Help me understand. It works on the job. It might work better at home. Have you ever gone home and your spouse or significant other is clearly upset? Sure you have. A great option is to go home and just say, what the heck's your problem? That will get you one probably undesirable response. Another great option is to go home and just say, man, looks like you had a tough day. Help me understand what's going on. Help me understand how I can help. Right now, we got a lot of people going through something. I think one of the best things we can do is to just listen to their perspective. I think we're also eager to tell our story. How often do we see somebody struggling and we just say, man, looks like you're having a tough time. Help me understand what's going on. Now, they will help you understand. Sometimes that problem's you. That's okay. Might as well get the facts. Might as well figure out what it is. Then we'll go from there. Guys, I appreciate you tuning in tonight. Garth Brooks, I'm sorry I booked this at the same time you were doing yours, and hopefully my millions of followers will go see your program as you probably posted it on your page for them to see later, and hope the 15, 20 guys that are watching yours will come over and see mine. But got a bunch more stories. If you like this, let me know, and we'll do this again. Till next time, take care.